As of recording this video, Turkey is preparing for another military intervention in Syria. But what I find more important is that the United States has responded to Turkey, calling for de-escalation in the region. They have claimed to be worried over many things from ISIS to humanitarian concerns. However, this hides the United States' true reason. Turkey, an entity that has transformed under different stages in the past 2 centuries. But what has not changed is the United States' interest in the region. Most importantly, the social, political, and economic value that Turkey holds. And this discussion is important as this does not just go for Turkey. Every corner of the world has piqued America's interest to some degree. And as the United States grew more powerful in the 20th century, its obsession with dominating the world has mutated to greater extremes, leading to many conflicts we see today. And all of this applies to Turkey too. In this video, we are going to go through a rather unknown history. When the United States was born in 1776, the Ottoman Empire ruled what today is known as Turkey, and after centuries of expansion and domination, they were suffering from political and economic decline. And with that, the European powers at the time were increasingly interested in the lands controlled by the Ottomans. This included the Suez Canal, the Bosphorus Strait, and the Anatolian Peninsula. All were not only crucial for trade from Asia to Europe, but also strategic areas to halt the expansion of other European states. And that was why Austria and Russia increased their influence in the Balkans, while Great Britain and France did so in the Middle East. But the United States was not left out. Even though they were 10,000 kilometers away, many in American society believed that their core values of democracy and liberalism should be spread across the world. And this morphed into Wilsonianism, a sort of foreign policy based on US President Woodrow Wilson. He led the United States during World War I, and by 1918, the Central Powers, including the Ottoman Empire, were all defeated. With this, Wilson envisioned a new global order where international powers intervene in other countries to maintain world peace, or a quote, liberal objective. It included the spread of democracy, the establishment of international bodies such as the United Nations, advocating for self-determination, and advocating for the spread of capitalism. Many of Wilson's ideas have survived to this day, mutated into what we know as American military intervention, the United States' supposed responsibility to uphold their values across the world. Not only has it influenced America's interest in Turkey, but it has also caused dramatic consequences in the modern world, all leading to the misery and destruction of millions of people. So following the Ottoman Empire's defeat and occupation after World War I, the Turkish War of Independence kicked off against their European occupiers. But what's interesting is that while the United States never fought in the conflict, they did involve themselves in the region. In fact, they sent a fleet under the name of Detachment Protecting Americans and American Interests in Turkish Waters. It provided security to American tobacco companies, aid to American missionaries, and supplies to local Armenians, which was actually the United States' first ever humanitarian program in modern history. The American Navy even supported the Allies by escorting Greek forces landing in Anatolia to fight the Turks. The point is that the United States has been interested in Turkey even before the latter became an independent country in 1923. However, 2 things changed everything. Firstly was oil. Vast oil reserves were discovered in the Middle East, which was capable of supplying 75% of all Western demands. And secondly was the Soviet Union. After World War II, they had not only occupied half of Europe, defeating Nazi Germany in the process, but also began to pressure Turkey. In particular, the USSR wanted to establish bases on the Bosphorus Straits and also take land in eastern Anatolia. I have already covered this in my first ever video, but what you need to know is that all of this threatened US influence in the Middle East, and since the United States wanted to maintain control over the region, including its oil, it announced the Truman Doctrine in 1947. It is the most important change in US foreign policy history, declaring that political, military, and economic support for all democratic countries resisting communism.
If Turkey is to have the assistance it needs, the United States must supply it. We are the only country able to provide that help.
And because of the Truman Doctrine, Turkey received $100 million in economic and military aid, joined NATO in 1952, and had driven a missile station across the country, which was actually one of the reasons why the Cuban Missile Crisis was such a big deal. All of this provided Turkey protection against Soviet expansion while becoming closer to the Western world. But as Turkey defied one superpower, they drifted towards the other. And to maintain the American sphere of influence, drastic measures were used in the following decades. This included Operation Gladio, secret operations organized by NATO and the CIA to prevent the spread of communism across Europe. In Turkey, the CIA cooperated and funded many staunch secularists and anti-communists in the military. These high-ranking officers with positions of power were concerned that Turkey was vulnerable to Islamic and communist groups. And with the permission of the United States, the Turkish military staged coups in 1971 and 1980. The latter coup not only placed Turkey under military rule, but it also placed CIA-endorsed figures into parliament and strengthened anti-Islamic laws in the country. Operation Gladio in general is something that I need to expand upon in the future because there is a lot to talk about. But the point is this: these secret operations were there to keep US influence over the entire region, including Turkey, to make sure that any groups opposing the status quo in Turkey, such as Islamic movements, were silenced and couldn't reach positions of power.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
This is where we get to the 21st century. The Soviet Union is gone, and as President George Bush described, our enemy is uncertainty and instability. It was many things according to the United States: the weapons of mass destruction, anti-American regimes in the Third World, and Islamic terrorism. All of this still made Turkey important, especially with countries like the Middle East that were drifting away from American influence. However, something is different. For the first time in nearly a century, Turkey has actually defied many pressures from the United States to act accordingly. Under Erdogan, Turkey not only opposed the Iraq War, despite the United States promising a $20 billion loan, but the country has also asserted itself on the international stage. And in response, the United States has continued to monitor and even punish many of Turkey's steps away from the West. And you might be asking, why? Why is the United States so interested in Turkey even today? Well, let's see what the United States have to say themselves. Turkey is a key NATO ally and critical regional partner, and the United States is committed to improving the relationship between our two countries. It is in our interest to keep Turkey anchored in the Euro-Atlantic community. And that's the point. Turkey defying the United States is damaging to American soft power. Turkey has the second largest army in NATO and huge economic potential. For a regional power to drift from the United States, it threatens the unchallenged global superpower from asserting its control, especially in a region as vital as the Middle East. That is why this video is important, to understand why America is obsessed with Turkey, its history, and how it will play out in the future. And with a potential military operation in Syria, I can guarantee that the United States will not only keep their eyes on Turkey, but will retaliate. And if you really are doubtful about this video, I want you to listen to this final piece and listen to the man himself, Biden.
But I'm still of the view that if we were to engage more directly, like I was doing with them, that we can support those elements of the Turkish leadership that still exist and get more from them and embolden them to be able to take on and defeat Erdogan.